Now, what I will say is we are also decoupling the lander from the launch vehicle and the pad itself. What does that mean? It means NASA is laser focused on the lander because we're laser focused on our mission to return astronauts to the surface of the moon before 2028.
Using SpaceX's Starship to launch Blue Origin's Blue Moon is the craziest and most ironic plan in the space industry right now. However, this is also the only choice left to save NASA's moon mission. So, why is that? Is this actually feasible? Let's dive in. It's been over 3 weeks since New Glenn exploded on the pad at Launch Complex 36 on May 28th, and we still don't know exactly why. It's not that Blue Origin is hiding anything. Even their own engineers don't have a clear answer yet. Was it the BE-4 engines? The high-pressure COPV tanks? A leaking fuel valve? They're investigating every possibility. What we do know is this. The launch pad is badly damaged. New Glenn is grounded. Sure, CEO Dave Limp says they're aiming for another launch before the end of the year. But right now, that rocket isn't going anywhere. Now, let me paint you a picture. Imagine NASA has a real emergency on the moon. The Artemis crew needs urgent supplies, or, God forbid, a rescue. They call Blue Origin and ask, "How soon can you launch?" The answer right now: not today. That's the quiet problem nobody wants to say out loud. Blue Moon, Blue Origin's lunar lander, NASA's backup plan to SpaceX's Starship, only has one rocket that can carry it, New Glenn. And New Glenn is sitting idle. In spaceflight, you never rely on just one plan A. So, here's the real question. What's plan B for Blue Moon? Is there any other rocket out there strong enough to launch it? You'd think Falcon Heavy would be the obvious choice. It's got a perfect 100% success rate, and it's currently the most powerful rocket flying commercially. But here's the catch. Falcon Heavy's payload fairing is only 5.2 meters wide. Blue Moon was custom built for New Glenn's big 7-meter fairing. That's nearly a 2-meter difference. You can't just squeeze it in there. It's like trying to shove a double-door refrigerator through a standard kitchen doorway. It physically doesn't fit without redesigning the entire lander from the ground up. As NASA's admin Jared Isaacman said,
the Mark 1, there's a lot of mass there and volume, so getting that in a fairing of a vehicle and then being able to send it to the moon, I think you're in Falcon Heavy land. You could potentially be an expendable Falcon Heavy land.
And even if you could make it fit, there's the fuel problem. Falcon Heavy runs on RP1, kerosene and liquid oxygen. Blue Moon needs liquid hydrogen, stored at minus 253 degrees Celsius. Converting SpaceX's launch infrastructure to handle liquid hydrogen would take years and hundreds of millions of dollars. So, Falcon Heavy is out. Next up is Vulcan's Centaur. It's a little more promising because its upper stage already uses hydrolox, same fuel as Blue Moon. But here's the kicker. Its payload fairing still isn't wide enough for Blue Moon's base, and worse. Vulcan's main engines are the BE-4, the exact same engines now under investigation after the New Glenn explosion. If they find a fundamental problem with the BE-4, Vulcan gets grounded too. So right now, when you look at the whole picture, Starship is starting to look like the only realistic ride for Blue Moon. It's not because Starship is perfect. It's because right now, it's the only vehicle that can actually carry Blue Moon without forcing a complete redesign of the lander. Starship's payload bay is about 9 meters wide, bigger than New Glenn's 7-meter fairing. That means it can swallow the whole Blue Moon, wide base and all, with room to spare, and no major structural changes needed. On top of that, even a single-use Starship can haul over 100 tons to low Earth orbit. Some estimates put the expendable version north of 200 tons. A fully loaded Blue Moon Mark II weighs somewhere between 45 to 54 tons. Starship can handle that easily. But here's where a lot of people stop and think the problem is solved. Starship's big, it's powerful, it can fit Blue Moon. Done. Not quite. The real challenge isn't just getting Blue Moon into orbit. The real question is, once it's up there, how does Blue Moon actually get to the moon? You see, Starship and Blue Moon run on completely different fuels, and that creates a serious headache. Starship burns methalox, liquid methane, and liquid oxygen. Blue Moon uses hydrolox, liquid hydrogen, and liquid oxygen. Those two don't mix. The plumbing, the tanks, the temperatures, everything is different. In the current Artemis plan, Starship HLS needs somewhere between 10 to 15 tanker flights just to fill up with enough methalox in orbit before heading to the moon. That's already one of the most complex logistics operations in human spaceflight history. Now throw Blue Moon into that picture. Blue Moon can't use methane. It needs its own hydrolox. In Blue Origin's original architecture, they planned to launch a separate cislunar tanker built by Lockheed Martin, slowly stockpile hydrolox over multiple flights, then refuel Blue Moon near lunar orbit. That's not one mission anymore. That's two giant overlapping logistics campaigns running at the same time in deep space, something nobody has ever done. That's the most complicated path, but it's not the only one. Let's flip the question. What is Starship really good at? It's not flying all the way to the moon. Its real superpower is lifting massive payloads to low Earth orbit in a single launch, with a payload bay big enough to carry almost anything you can design. So, why not let Starship do what it does best? Let it carry Blue Moon up to orbit, drop it off, and let Blue Moon handle the rest of the journey with its own systems. To make that work cleanly, we introduce a third piece, a dedicated Earth departure stage, or EDS. This is actually a very old and proven idea in mission design. Instead of making the main rocket do all the work, you attach a separate upper stage to the payload. That stage rides along quietly in orbit, then fires to perform the translunar injection burn that sends the payload toward the moon. In this case, that stage would be the Centaur 5, ULA's hydrolox upper stage that currently flies on Vulcan Centaur. But remember, Centaur isn't the star of the show here. It's just a tool. Its only job is to push Blue Moon out of Earth orbit. Why Centaur 5? 3 solid technical reasons. First, it burns hydrolox, the same fuel as Blue Moon. That means you can fully load it at Blue Origin or ULA's facilities, where they already have the hydrogen infrastructure, seal it up, and slide the whole thing into Starship's payload bay. No liquid hydrogen ever touches SpaceX's launch site. Second, the RL-10 engines on Centaur are some of the most efficient ever built for deep space. Their specific impulse is around 465 seconds, compared to Starship's Raptor at about 363 seconds in vacuum. That difference matters a lot. It gives you way more delta V for the same amount of propellant. And since Starship already did the heavy lifting to orbit, every drop of Centaur's fuel is used for the trip to the moon. Third, Centaur's pressure-stabilized thin-wall design means over 90% of its mass is actual propellant. It's extremely optimized for deep space performance. When you run the numbers using the Tsiolkovsky rocket equation, a fully loaded Centaur 5, departing from LEO, can deliver roughly 3.1 to 3.3 kilometers per second of delta V for translunar injection, enough to send a payload of about 47 to 48 tons toward the moon. That lines up almost perfectly with the optimized Blue Moon Mark II. Total mass Starship would need to lift to orbit in this setup, a fueled Centaur 5 at around 60 tons, Blue Moon at 45 to 47 tons, plus adapters and structure, roughly 105 to 110 tons. That's well within what a reusable Starship can handle comfortably. So, what do you think? Do you believe Starship can pull this off? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you're enjoying these deep dives, don't forget to subscribe. But let me be straight with you. I'm not here to sugarcoat it. Yes, this architecture is technically feasible, but feasible doesn't mean easy. There are some real hurdles we'd have to clear before this could actually happen. First off, Blue Moon is still a bit too heavy. Centaur Vi can push about 47 to 48 tons toward the moon. The current Blue Moon Mark II is a little over that limit, so Blue Origin will need to put it on a diet, cut every kilogram they can without hurting the important stuff. It's not a full redesign, but it's real engineering work. Like packing for a flight with a strict baggage weight limit, every single pound has to earn its ticket. Second, Starship and Blue Moon have never worked together before. Blue Moon was built for New Glenn's quieter ride. Starship is a lot louder and more violent with those 33 Raptor engines. They'll need a custom adapter, and Blue Moon will have to go through a whole new round of vibration and acoustic testing. That takes time and costs serious money. Third, there's the liquid hydrogen boil-off problem. Hydrogen likes to evaporate even when it's well insulated. If Starship has any delays and the stack has to sit in orbit longer than planned, you start losing fuel you can't get back. So they'll either need very tight launch windows or some active cooling system on the Centaur. Fourth, you've got three very different companies, SpaceX, ULA, and Blue Origin, that would have to work extremely closely together. Different cultures, different ways of doing things, and a history that isn't always friendly. Figuring out who's in charge at the interfaces and who's responsible if something goes wrong between systems is going to be interesting. And finally, even after all that, Blue Moon still needs enough fuel in its own tanks to land safely. Centaur gets it to the moon, but Blue Origin will probably still need a smaller tanker from Lockheed Martin to top it off in lunar orbit. The silver lining? This refueling operation would be much smaller and simpler than their original plan, because Centaur already did the hardest part of the trip. Of course, there's no need to get overly worried. There's actually a quiet signal from NASA that most people haven't connected to this story yet. But when you look at it from the right angle, it strongly supports the exact logic behind this Starship plus Centaur architecture. NASA recently decided to use Centaur 5 to replace the exploration upper stage for Artemis 4 and 5. That EUS was a custom-designed upper stage for the upgraded SLS, nearly 2 decades in development, over $4 billion spent, and it still hasn't flown once. It's also tied to the painfully delayed Mobile Launcher 2. Instead of waiting, NASA turned to something that already exists, has flown many times, and can be integrated with minimal changes, the Centaur 5. Its RL-10 engines have a decades-long track record of reliability, hundreds of flights, and it's a direct evolution of the ICPS stage already flying on current SLS missions. On top of that, when NASA and the astronomy community talked about launching the next generation of giant space telescopes, like the Louvre with its 15-meter mirror or the Habitable Worlds Observatory, Starship was identified as the ideal launch vehicle. The reason is simple. Its 9-meter payload bay lets you launch a large, monolithic mirror instead of folding it up like the James Webb. Fewer moving parts, fewer things that can go wrong. At its core, Blue Moon isn't all that different from one of those big telescopes when it comes to the launch problem. Similar size, similar weight, and no complex mechanical deployments after launch. In some ways, Blue Moon is actually easier. It doesn't need extreme optical precision, and it was already designed to handle launch vibrations. So if Starship is considered good enough to launch a multi-billion-dollar, ultra-delicate scientific instrument that can't be touched after deployment, then it's more than capable of launching a lunar lander.